Hello, and welcome back to the show. This week, we're bringing you 4 stories that will bring you to the edge of death. Terrifying encounters and situations that are so hair-raisingly sinister, they knock on death's door. So sit back, listen closely, and dive into the horror. First, a story narrated by Adam C. Alderson from Reddit user Weird Suggestion 152. I was a police officer, and I think I witnessed an actual curse.
I used to be a police officer in this city in Virginia. There's one upscale neighborhood in our city with lots of very nice homes. While I was a new officer, I always heard stories about a doctor who used to live in one of the homes. As the story goes, the doctor attempted to perform some type of operation on himself. He had numbed his stomach area so he could make an incision on himself, but since he couldn't feel it, he accidentally cut too deep and managed to disembowel himself. When officers and paramedics had arrived, he was found barely alive. His own intestines balled up in his hands. He ended up dying a few days later. Fast forward to a few years ago when I was assigned a call about a young woman found dead by her older sister. When I arrived on the scene, it was in the aforementioned nice neighborhood. I got out of my car and immediately felt uneasy as I walked up to the house. While nice on the outside, there was just a negative energy with this place. As I approached the front porch, I noticed countless empty energy drink cans and a Ouija board on the front patio table. Everything just felt wrong. When I was led inside, the family was obviously very distraught. I was told the deceased sister, Emily, was in the basement. At this point, another officer had arrived and he stayed upstairs with the family as I entered the basement. It was unfinished and fairly dark. The only things illuminating the space were 2 pull-string light bulbs, one on each side of the room. The scene in the basement was exactly like the front porch. Energy drink cans everywhere and another Ouija board on a small coffee table. Emily was 19, if I remember correctly, and was hanging by her neck from a basement rafter. She had hung herself with an exercise band and was swinging back and forth slightly. Her face was blue, bloated, and contorted into a horrible expression. Another officer helped me lift her to bring her down. Emily's family consisted of her mother, father, and older sister. Her parents stated they had been desperately trying to help her because all she ever did was drink energy drinks to stay up all hours of the night playing with the Ouija board. Her sister gave a little more detail about it. Being sisters, she stated that they were very close and told each other everything. Her older sister said Emily indeed had been obsessed with the Ouija board, drinking energy drinks to stay up all night and talk to what she believed was her boyfriend, who was dead. Her sister stated Emily had been saying that her boyfriend was begging for her to come join him in the afterlife, and so she believed that's why she did what she did. Let me reiterate, this house felt wrong. Everything felt bad, even though there was a dead body in the basement. There was something else down there too. More than the suicide, the aura in our home really stuck with me. We really never got much more of an explanation, and as cops, there's always another thing you have to rush off to. It mostly slipped my mind until 2 weeks later, to the day, I got a call about a car accident with an ejection. I headed to the call code 1 with my lights and sirens going, and arrived to find a convertible BMW with the top down. It had been in a horrible crash and was rolled over onto its side. In the driver's seat was a woman who clearly had a broken neck as her head was turned nearly 180 degrees. Next to the vehicle, about 25 feet away, was a man who'd been ejected. This was a convertible car, so he was ejected from the top of the car with nothing to slow him down. He was missing the entire top half of his head. There were pieces of brain everywhere. I went to close off the scene with yellow tape and started walking the perimeter of the scene. I walked about about 75 yards away from the accident where I found yet another large chunk of his brain. I'm not trying to be intentionally graphic, but I want to paint the picture of just how bad and violent this car accident was. After we finally got the ID for the man, my heart dropped. As I read the driver's license to dispatch, another officer and I both realized the same thing at the same time. These people were Emily's parents. 2 weeks ago, to the day, I was in their home taking their dead daughter down from the basement rafters. Breaking the news to the older sister was heartbreaking. I kept in touch with her for a little while, and I knew that she had inherited her parents' estate and all of the life insurance money, so she was set up pretty well. She ended up selling off everything and buying a different house to try and start over and repair her broken life. I wish the story ended there. Around a month later, I heard from another officer that he was first to the scene after a pedestrian was struck by a car while she was jogging in her neighborhood. I was floored when I learned that it was the sister. She survived for several weeks in a coma but didn't end up pulling through. When that happened, it set me off. I started looking through the old county records, and sure enough, Emily and her family lived in the same house where that crazy doctor sliced himself open. I don't know about you, and I was about ready to stop calling these deaths coincidences. Maybe Emily made contact with his spirit. Maybe he had always cursed that house and the people who lived there. Who knows? One thing is for certain. That place had a strong, negative aura. I can still remember the feeling of it to this day. I live states away and I'm no longer a policeman, but experiences like this one still haunt me.
Our next story is from r/Let's Not Meet, about having a bone to pick with your dad's old friend.
My parents divorced in 2006, right before their 18-year anniversary. It was a long time coming. My dad had sustained a head injury 4 years prior, so his drinking and drug use went from a lot to a cyclone of crazy. And my mom finally decided she had had enough. My dad left and we remained in the house. The first month he was gone, we experienced peace like never before. At age 17, I remember feeling free for the first time in my
Trong chữ nhẹ
life.
thì vẫn có dấu nặng. Trong chữ
My
vững thì
dad
vẫn
had to
có
be
dấu ngã.
supervised
Trong chữ
by
hiểu
state
vẫn có dấu
police when
hỏi.
he collected his stuff.
Trước khi học được
He
chữ
was
khôn, người ta
violent
phải đánh
and
thần
had
phạm
threatened
đường
to
thờ.
kill me
Sung
on
sướng có
several
9 chữ
occasions.
thì gian truân cũng
He
thế.
never cleared out
Hạnh
the
phúc có 8
basement,
chữ
but
thì
left
bí
all
thương
of
cũng
his
thế.
garbage
Tình
for
yêu
us
có
to
8
deal
chữ
with.
thì phản bội cũng vậy.
Some of
Làm
my
người
friends
đừng mong
came
trọn
over to
vẹn
help
mọi
my
thứ.
mom and I clean up.
Buồn
We
vui
ended
sướng
up
khổ
making
là chuyện
200
thường
bucks
tình.
from
Vì vậy cuộc
recycling
sống
all
của
his
bạn có
beer
thể gặp
cans.
rất nhiều khó khăn, rất nhiều
We
mệt
also
mỏi. Nhưng các bạn
discovered
hãy
that
nghĩ
my
rằng
dad had been
tất
growing
cả chỉ
weed
là
in
thử
the
thách. Nếu
basement.
vượt qua được, cuộc sống
He
của bạn
left
sẽ thay đổi.
all of his plants and equipment behind, which we threw out because it was illegal in my state at the time and we didn't want my mom getting in trouble for it. My dad told us he got everything he wanted from the house and that I would never have to interact with him again. He willingly gave my mom full custody, so we thought we were rid of him for good. If only that were true. I don't remember when it started, but my dad started drunkenly calling our house every night. He'd accuse my mom of cheating even though he himself was already living with another woman. Some nights he'd be belligerent, other nights he'd just be crying. Then, people started prowling around our house at night. My special needs sister started seeing a man in a ski mask at her bedroom window. I often had to run outside with a baseball bat to chase someone away. It became a habit for me to wait up at night and patrol, just to make sure we were all safe. I was always on high alert and developed a caffeine addiction and a good layer of trauma from all of this. I suspected that my dad's friends were the ones slinking around our property, especially since they were very interested in the basement, which was only accessible from the outside. Luckily, it had a sturdy door and a thick padlock on it. Now, I am not a small person. I was a football player and very strong, and I was determined to protect my mom and my sister. One winter night, I was awoken by some sounds at my bedroom window. I saw a man in a ski mask with a large hunting knife in his mouth trying to open the window. I quietly snuck off my bed to the floor and crawled out of my room to the living room. I put on my shoes and jacket and grabbed a Louisville Slugger I kept by the front door. I slipped outside and confronted the man, who I recognized as one of my dad's friends. I warned him he needed to leave before I hurt him. He took a swing at me with his hunting knife. I dodged and cracked him on the shoulder as hard as I could with my bat. I heard bones break as his shoulder jerked unnaturally and he fell into the snow. I jumped on top of him and ripped the ski mask off his face. I started punching him over and over, and just pent-up fear and anger coursing through my veins. My mom and some neighbors came outside, and it took 6 of them to pull me off the man, who was unconscious at this point. As we waited for the cops, the man came to and managed to get up. The car pulled up to the curb, one of his buddies, I guess, and he hopped in before we could stop him. And the car took off, snow concealing its license plate. This was before Ring doorbells were a thing, so we had no security footage of the incident. We gave our statements to the cops, who took the hunting knife as evidence and then left. Well, things were quiet for a while, until the summer, when I cornered the same guy in the dark in our small backyard. He yelled that he wanted his equipment from the basement. I told him we tossed it. This provoked him to charge at me. I quickly picked up a large garden brick and hurled it at him. The brick hit him in the same spot I had hit him in months earlier. This time, I sat on him to make sure he couldn't escape. He kicked and screamed as my mom called the cops, who showed up and arrested him. They told me that I had broken his collarbone and that he wanted to press charges, but nothing ever came of it. The whole situation ended up blowing over, and we stopped getting nighttime visits from ski-masked men. No, my dad admitted he was involved, but he wasn't sorry for pitting these men against his kids and ex-wife. Years later, I happened to see the man whose collarbone I had broken, and while I'm not the same person I was when I was a teen, I was glad to see he still had a healthy level of fear of me. I also ran into another of the guys involved, and he was very cautious around me. He mentioned he didn't want to get the same treatment his friend had gotten from me. It felt good, seeing these guys know not to mess with my family again, because there are consequences.
You are listening to Disturbed. We'll be right back.
Well, hey, podcast listener. My name is Vince, and I'm the host of a show called The RR Show. It stands for Reddit Readings. We're going to sit down twice a week, and I'm going to bring you the most entertaining stories from all of the best subreddits that exist online. Things like malicious compliance, petty revenge, hey lady, I don't work here. Oh, there's so much more. Lots of great stories and things you won't believe. Like the one time this dude was caught in a bathroom with his friend, and he was slapping them because that was the only way that he could actually legitimately help them. A mall cop comes in with a taser. Oh yeah, the rest is history. It's going to be fun. There's, I don't know, I got like 20 seconds left, so I don't got much more time to tell you another story. But just join me on The RR Show. It's from Evergreen Podcast, produced in partnership with Wessler Media. So The RR Show, wherever you get podcasts, subscribe today. And it's like an adult story time. Let's hang out together. The RR Show. Subscribe today wherever you get your podcasts.
Ever heard of Stoicism? Chances are, if you have, you've heard of Stoicism with a lowercase s and not Stoicism with an uppercase S. Lone wolves, no emotions, antisocial behavior, cold indifference. All that is Stoicism with a lowercase s. Stoicism with an uppercase S is the ancient Greek philosophy and virtue ethics framework that centers on service to the cosmopolis, to include your family, friends, community, and planet, and the development of a good moral character. My name is Tanner Campbell, and I'm the host of Practical Stoicism, a 3 times a week podcast teaching Stoic principles and concepts to anyone interested. through the exploration of texts and deep dives into various moral topics. You can find Practical Stoicism where you're already listening to podcasts by searching for Practical Stoicism or by going to stoicismpod.com. I invite you to give it a listen today. You just might like it.
Welcome back to the podcast. Our next story is a haunting reminder to lock your doors at night. Narrated by Dallas Stark.
I've never shared this story with anyone before. It was just too crazy to bring up before now. So back in high school, my family ended up needing to move out of the blue. I forget exactly why, but I think it was some financial issue my parents ran into. It was my twin brothers in my senior year of high school, though, and we didn't want to do it at a new school. After some deliberation, my family decided we would move in with some friends in the school district and follow my family after the school year. It was only 45 minutes away, still super close, we thought. Well, it was finally moving day, and I couldn't get off work on this random Tuesday night. My parents, my little sister, and my brother spent the day loading the U-Haul and driving it across town to the new place, and I would have to come home that evening and spend one last night in the house by myself. In the morning, my friends were going to come over and help me pack up and get out of there. Around 9:30, I pulled into the driveway at our old house, and I was surprised to see my brother's car in the driveway. I walked in the front door and could clearly hear him in his room talking to someone. I assumed it was his girlfriend and knocked on the door to tell him I was home and going to bed. But as soon as I knocked on the door, the conversation stopped, and I couldn't hear anything coming from his room anymore. I just thought he was being annoying, so I shouted, "Fine, be that way!" at his door before going to my room immediately to the right. I went about my evening routine, showered, made an evening snack, snagged my laptop, locked the front door, turned off lights, etc. When I walked back towards the bedrooms, the two of them fell silent again. I didn't know what his deal was, but I was properly annoyed by this point, so I shut my door with some force and locked it shut. I fell asleep pretty quick, but woke up at 2 a.m. to the sound of my doorknob shaking and someone pushing on the door. I could hear people talking, but I couldn't make out anything they were saying. I sat up in my bed and called out, "Logan? Hello?" As soon as I spoke up, there was silence from the hallway. I got up and ran to the door and swung it open just in time to hear his door slam shut again. I was really pissed off now. I ran to his door and shouted, "Logan, hello, what do you want? Why are you being such a jerk?" I slammed on the door out of frustration before going back into my room, locking the door behind me, and getting back to sleep. When I woke up in the morning, my brother's car was gone, and his room was empty. I thought it made sense. We both had school, and maybe he had to take his girlfriend home or something. I got ready and started my walk to school. It was only a few minutes away. I called my mom on the way and complained about Logan's antics while we were talking. I could tell something was wrong by the way her voice changed.
Logan didn't spend the night there last night. We talked a little while ago, and he told me about how he carpooled with a friend and spent the night at their place last night.
My stomach dropped. "Are you sure?" I asked. "I heard him talking in the room next to mine. He woke me up trying to get in my room."
Yes, he had to walk home to get his car. It's when he called me.
She finished. We both freaked out, and after school I had my friend's parents come with me to the house to help me pack up my things. We walked in to find the place completely ransacked. Mattresses cut down the middle, kitchen cabinets ripped off the hinges and glasses smashed onto the floor. They even took the clothes out of my dresser and ripped them up. My poor cat was hiding under my bed and wouldn't come out even for me. Still, to this day, I have no clue who spent the night with me that night. And it scares me to think what would have happened if I hadn't locked my door out of frustration for who I thought was my annoying brother. It could have been so much worse for me than some torn up clothes.
Our final story is narrated by Catherine Restivo from r/Let's Not Meet. Never trust the smiling man.
I know the title sounds like a horror movie or a creepypasta, and if I hadn't lived it, I'd think it was too. This is one of many stories from my time working the night shift at a laundromat in a rough neighborhood, and it's definitely the freakiest. Years ago, my mom took a job at a local laundromat because we knew the owner and needed extra money. I was about 10 when she started, and she let me come along, giving me a little allowance for helping with small tasks. I went with her every night for years, and as I got older, I mainly went to make sure she was safe. We regularly dealt with angry, intoxicated customers who refused to leave, and we had to call the police more than once. My mom always worried about me tagging along, but I insisted, and to this day, I can't say I regretted it. There were good experiences, mainly the work experience, which made up for the intensity. But one night, when I was about 12, was the most horrifying of them all. Being the young, naive kid I was, I took on the job of chasing people off when it was closing time. We often had people parking behind the building, so I'd walk to the side and start yelling that they were trespassing and that I'd call the cops if they didn't leave. Now, I realize I was letting any shady person hanging around the building know of my presence. A dangerous thing to do as a 12-year-old girl. I was blissfully unaware that anything could happen to me, until one night when we arrived to find the door lock had been broken. My mom had unlocked the building that morning, so it wasn't a break-in attempt. It had been unlocked all day. We were shaken. But my mom texted her boss to let him know and told me to alert her if I saw anyone pull up. About 30 minutes later, I finished my tasks and sat down to draw in my sketchbook. I had barely sat for a few minutes when I heard the door swing open. It startled me because people usually knocked when they saw the very obvious close sign. My mom noticed it too and yelled out that we were closed. An older man's voice responded, saying he just wanted to use our drink machine. We usually let people in for the snack and drink machines, so my mom told him he had a few minutes and went back into the closet to grab something. I was sitting about 7 feet away from the drink machine, so I heard him walk up but didn't pay much attention to him. I continued drawing until I got the feeling someone was watching me. I realized I didn't hear this guy put any money in the drink machine. Nervously, I glanced to my left and saw a tall man in his mid-60s staring right at me with a big, unsettling smile on his face. I jumped a little, forced an awkward smile back, and directed my attention to drawing again. As soon as I looked away, I heard shuffling. When I glanced over again, he was closer. I didn't know what to do, so I tried to ignore him, but every time I looked away, he shuffled closer. His body was facing the drink machine, but his neck was craned towards me, and he wouldn't stop smiling and staring. I began shaking, my eyes darting back and forth between him and the closet door as I tried to plan a quick escape. I reached for my knife in my bag, only to realize it wasn't there. I had left it at home when I needed it the most. Petrified, I decided to stare back at him, despite my fear and trembling. After what felt like an eternity, he suddenly broke eye contact, yelled to my mom to have a good night, and walked out. Relief washed over me, and I tried to calm down. I thought I was safe. But as I got up to splash some water on my face, I saw him sit down on the bench outside. Panic and dread hit me like a brick. I sprinted into the closet to hide and filled my mom in. She told me to run to the car while she got between us, ready to use pepper spray if needed. I ran to the car, and as I passed him, he stood up and started walking towards me. My mom yelled at him to get away from the car, but he tried to start a calm conversation about the make and model of her car while staring right at me. She ignored him, jumped in the car, locked us in, and backed up quickly. I ducked down in my seat, but still saw him standing there. He lifted his hand and waved goodbye before disappearing into the darkness behind the building. I felt sick. I couldn't sleep that night and never dared go near the back of the building again. Creepy, old, smiling man. Let's not meet again.
Want more Disturbed? Check out our Patreon for member-exclusive content, early merch access, and other cool perks. I'm your host, Doug Bailey, and this has been Disturbed, a production of Killer Podcasts and part of the Evergreen Network. For more paranormal and true crime shows, visit killerpodcasts.com. Follow our social channels at Disturbed Podcast on Instagram or Disturbed_pod on Twitter. If you enjoyed the show, please consider subscribing and reviewing on your favorite listening platform. Share your own true horror story at disturbedpodcast.com. Music by Epidemic Sound and by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. Our producers are Noah Fouts and Elizabeth Flood. Our audio engineer is Nathan Corson. Executive producers Bridget Coyne and Gerardo Orlando. Until next time, stay safe out there.
My name is Bill Huffman, and I am a former Cleveland news producer, and I am now the host of the podcast, Who Killed? I began the show focusing on the unsolved murder of Amy Mihaljevic, and now each week I explore a different case with a focus on some of the victims who don't get the attention they deserve. I have a deep catalog of over 225 episodes, so there is a guarantee there will be something for you. Who Killed is an Evergreen Podcasts, Killer Podcasts, and Slow Burn Media production. Subscribe today wherever you get your favorite shows.